All right, good morning, everyone. How's everybody doing? We can do a little better than that. How's everybody doing? Come on. That's what I'm talking about. Thank you and good morning, everyone. This is Windows Admin Center Unlock Azure Hybrid Value. I'm Jeff Woolsey, and I'm here with Hayley Rowland.
Hello, everyone.
And it's really a pleasure to be here. I hope everyone's having a great time at Ignite. We've had lots of sessions. We've had Demopalooza. We've had mechanics. We've had all sorts of great things. And Hayley and I actually have lots more stuff to show. So we're actually going to keep this moving along. So I'm going to get right into this. You know, Admin Center.
Windows Admin Center is the future of server management. It's server management reimagined. And it gives you a beautiful new GUI in a web browser for remotely managing your servers. And it's really good for four main components that it comprises of, right? Core management tools, Windows Server role management, of course, the hybrid integration that will show you how to unlock that value today, and the value that's brought to our ecosystem through third-party partners. Now, in today's session, we're going to talk about, of course, the hybrid value. But if you want to hear about all the other wonderful, amazing things that we've brought into Windows Admin Center this year, I highly encourage you to check out Daniel's session tomorrow with Windows Admin Center, What's New and What's Next.
Yeah, Admin Center does so much, Hayley, that we literally could not put it all in one session.
Right.
So we're going to cover the hybrid stuff today. Daniel will cover the on-prem tools and the core innovation in the platform. Now, when it comes to what you guys are telling us in terms of your digital transformation, it's very, very clear. I talk to customers all the time. In fact, let me ask a simple question for everybody in the audience. Simple question, your organization, what is your organization's cloud strategy? Is it A, all public cloud? Is it B, all private cloud, no servers on-prem? Or is it C, hybrid cloud? Okay, I'm going to look for a show of hands. How many of you are all public cloud, no servers at all? All right. How many of you are all private cloud, no public at all? Okay, and how many of you are hybrid cloud? And all the hands go up. It's exactly what happens every time I ask this question, and I've been asking this question for years. And so when we ask people why they want hybrid, by the way, 87% of organizations are integrating hybrid cloud into their data centers as we speak right now. Why are they doing it? Things like backup and storage, giving me bottomless storage for my file servers, giving me DR capabilities. Also, using the cloud to better protect, better monitor your on-premises. It's about taking advantage of the best of both. There's a view where you're on-premises looking into the cloud, and there's a view where you're on-cloud looking down into on-premises. And spoiler alert, that's what Microsoft is all about. I actually tweeted it this morning. Hybrid cloud, it's not a side project. It's not a checkbox. It's not something we work on weekends. It is a core pillar. Other guys are giving it lip service. We're delivering. And you're seeing that big time. And you're going to see more of that here in our hybrid session.
So how does Windows Admin Center play into that? It's your bridge to the cloud. And the way that Windows Admin Center helps with that is it actually curates those Azure services that bring a lot of value to your on-premise environment. And it actually streamlines the setup of those services by allowing you to automatically set up these services and configure them for your on-prem servers in just a few clicks. So long documentation is now a thing of the past. And finally, because of the tight integration that we have with our Azure services in Windows Admin Center, you can seamlessly transition into the Azure portal where you can get a more centralized view, while Windows Admin Center gives you a more server-specific view.
Right on. And so we have so many Azure hybrid services integrated into Admin Center that we actually had to create a central hub. This is the Azure Hybrid Services tool we introduced. This has all of our hybrid integration in one place because it was literally all in a bunch of different tools. And customers said, this is great. I want one place that I can go to find this. And more importantly, when you add new tools like the new Azure Arc integration, guess what? It appears right here. So when we talk about hybrid, the first part, one way to think about it is extending on-premises into Azure. So the things that you have running on premises, how can we extend that into Azure, for example? And then there's also the second one, which is centrally managing from Azure. We'll get to that in a minute.
So let's talk about how you can extend your on-premises into Azure. And one of the main use cases for this that we see customers ready to adopt is for business continuity and disaster recovery. And so we have three services within Windows Admin Center integrated to help support this so that you can use Azure as your secondary site rather than setting up another set of hardware and paying for that. So we'll talk about Azure Site Recovery, Azure Backup, and Storage Replica. So what are the differences between these? Azure Site Recovery is really good if you have workloads running on VMs. So you can actually just replicate those into the cloud, and you're only going to pay for compute when you actually need to fail over and start up those VMs. And then there's Azure Backup, which is good for backing up system state and files and folders. And this is really good because it gives you recovery points that you can kind of roll back to if you need to, which is really good for preventing malicious deletion of data, such as ransomware. And finally, Storage Replica is really good if you want to do server-to-server, asynchronous or synchronous replication using block-based storage. So let's take a look at what those look like within Windows Admin Center.
Absolutely. So in Azure Backup, you have the ability to basically say, look, I just want to take an OS instance, and I just want to start backing this up immediately. And what's cool is it's really easy. You basically come in here, you set, hey, what's my backup policy? How often am I going to back up? How often am I going to, what's the retention like? But again, one of the biggest things we wanted to do was we wanted to protect your data at the same time. And if you look at the ransomware that's been out, it's not only going after the OSs, but it's looking for your backup, and it's trying to delete those or encrypt those as well, so you cannot get to those. What we have done is when you actually create a backup in Azure, in the workflow, we actually say, give us a passphrase. What that passphrase means is you put that in here, and when it's time to actually go delete a backup, for example, and it's time to delete, guess what? It won't let you delete it unless you put in a passphrase. So when that ransomware goes to delete your backups to try and make sure they get you to pay, you can say, no, sorry, you can't get to my backups because they're protected by a passphrase. It's also just nice as having as another check to make sure you don't accidentally delete a backup that you didn't want in the first place. So that's simply part of that capability. And then, of course, we have ASR. Azure Site Recovery, the nice thing about this is it's literally built right into the VM tool. So if you're running a bunch of VMs and you say, you know what, I'd like to go ahead and I'd like to replicate this, okay, simply click on the VM, select Protect VM. It's going to come up with options that say choose your subscription, choose your region. Great, we'll take care of all of that. You basically sign in, and boom, in just a couple seconds, you're instantly replicating. I didn't need to crack open a manual. I didn't need to crack open documentation. I didn't have to have a secondary data center. What's interesting was when I talk to folks that do DR, and I've been talking to these folks for the last 10 years, people are in two camps. There's the first camp is the people saying, I don't have $100 million to go buy and create a new data center, so I'm going to use Azure. And then there are people that have already spent the $100 million on that secondary data center, and they're going, I want to get out of this thing. This is crazy. It's a money pit, and I'm absolutely going to use Azure for my DR. Those are the two camps that I run to people. And we've made it literally this easy. Click on a VM, click on Protect, and you're ready to go. Then we've got Storage Replica. And this is great if you want to just do, hey, I need to do volume replication. This is asynchronous and synchronous replication. This is block-based. So this is going to get all of your storage covered here. And in Admin Center, you want to be able to create this. OK, come right in here. And you can set up Storage Replica. Now, one brand new feature we just introduced in WAC 19, Admin Center 1910 that we just released, is now it will actually create a new Azure VM for you. So before, you would set up Storage Replica, and if you wanted a replica, you had to switch into Azure, create the VM, and then set up the replica. Now you can do all of this in Admin Center without ever having to leave the Admin Center console. You can say, hey, I want to replicate this. OK, create the new VM. We'll handle the rest for you. Awesome how we do that. So that is about extending on-premises into Azure.
Right, so let's look at other ways that you could actually extend on-prem into Azure, and that's around extending your capacity. So we'll talk about storage, compute, and networking. So let's first focus on storage. How can you extend capacity, your storage capacity into Azure? So one great tool for that is Azure File Sync, which essentially gives you bottomless file capacity in your on-prem servers. And a second is the Storage Migration Service, which will allow you to migrate from older file servers into new ones, and that could even be into an Azure VM.
So we launched Azure File Sync last year, and it has been a tremendous success. One way to think of it is literally as OneDrive for your file server. Basically, you say, I'm going to set this thing up, and it's going to tier into Azure. But rather than talk about it, let me switch on over here, and let me actually demo this for you. So here I am in Admin Center, and you can see I have Azure File Sync. And this looks, at the very beginning, it looks just like the V1 tool. Well, this is the brand new version of Azure File Sync. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to head on over here, and I'm going to click on Setup. Okay? And this gives me the option now to basically go in here, and it's actually installing the agent into the OS. It's preparing this and actually syncing it up and registering it with Azure. It's downloading, installing the agent, it's registering the server, and it says, hey, guess what, you're all set. And so now I can head on over here, and you can see I never had to leave the Azure, the Admin Center portal once. You can see where I'm registered to in terms of the subscription. If I want to see documentation, because I get a lot of questions about this, we actually put the link right in here. If you want to know what you need to do planning for Azure File Sync. Also, people always ask me, what do I need to know about my firewall settings and proxy settings? All the documentation's right here. We literally put it right here. The links are right here. And of course, now the really cool new thing in AFS is if you want to sync a folder, you literally just click on the Sync a Folder button, and you don't have to leave Admin Center ever. So now I can click on over here to the Browse button. By the way, I'm running this on Windows 10, managing a server remotely. I am never logging into the server at all. So here I can now enable tiering, and this is one of the things that's really just magical about Azure File Sync. So you can see below here, it has the option where it says, what is the minimum volume free space? That's your cloud tiering policy. It's currently set at 20%. But that's a real-time value. If I decide I want to change it to say, something like 30%, or if I want to, you see, when I change it to 30%, it adjusted how much volume free space, or 50%. I'm just going to leave it 20. And it means it's always going to keep 20% free space available, and it's going to tier the moment it gets beyond that threshold. So let me go here into sync group. I'm going to create a brand new sync group. And then we have the ability to select an existing sync group, or I can create a brand new one. I'm just going to go with the existing one that I have right here. And this is everything I need to do. And again, the whole time I've been here in Admin Center, the last version of the Azure File Sync, you could set up most of this, but then you had to go into Azure to configure the folders to actually sync and all of the tiering policies. Now this is all done in Admin Center. I never need to leave the Admin Center once, and I have just set up Azure File Sync without ever leaving the workflow. Now, in case you want to see what this looks like in Azure, no problem. Of course, this is Admin Center, so what do? We always put all of the links in here, so this can take you to the exact right location in Azure if you want to go do that too. And you can see here at the bottom, there is the share, there is the sync group. You can see it's at the 20% policy, and just like that, I've created Azure File Sync. One of my favorite stories, I literally just heard this 2 days ago. I was talking with one of my partners. He said he's working with a customer right now. They have a 20 terabyte file server that is effectively right now a 100 terabyte file server. They do all of these videos. They've got these massive files, okay? All of the stuff that they're working on is on the file server. So all the guys that are doing video work are happy. The moment they're done, guess what? If they need space, Azure File Sync is automatically tiering this in the cloud. They can't delete it. They need to keep it around for archival. They can't just go away, but they would be constantly running out of storage. Now they have a 20 terabyte, essentially hot cache on-prem, and Azure File Sync is moving all of this into the cloud. So this is really, really awesome. And so one thing I want to announce today is we have a fantastic partnership with our friends over at Fujitsu. They've been actually a fantastic partner. They were one of our first hardware partners with Admin Center. We are announcing together, Fujitsu's actually bundling Azure File Sync with their servers because they're seeing the demand for it. And so you're going to see Fujitsu Primergy servers, Fujitsu Azure Stack HCI solutions with Azure File Sync as part of that, and I'm really excited about that. Huge thanks to our friends over at Fujitsu. And so if you want to know more about migrating files and file servers, I also want to point out Ned's session. Files are critical to your business. Modernize your services with Windows Server 2019 in Azure. That's Ned, and that's later this afternoon.
All right, so we now have covered how you can extend your storage capacity into Azure. Now, how about compute capacity? So this is really good if you don't want to make additional hardware investments or if you have a need for a higher peak compute needs. So let's first talk about the Cloud Witness feature. So this allows me to have a 2-node cluster on premises and use the cloud as my witness rather than needing another additional piece of hardware to be that witness. And so in Windows Admin Center, it's quite easy to configure. You can just do it from the Cluster Manager tool within Admin Center. And say that I need to create an additional compute capacity, we could actually create an Azure VM right from within Windows Admin Center. Let's let Jeff take that away.
Yeah, so this is something we've kind of been working on in secret for quite a while, and I'm thrilled we finally get to show it off this week. So customers come up to me and say, you know what, I've deployed a 2-node Azure Stack HCI. Oh my gosh, I love this, but I should have bought more. I should have bought a 3 or a 4 node because we're going through it pretty quick because it's so easy to use. In the meantime, wouldn't it be great if I could just plug into Azure, by the way, use some VMs up there, create some VMs up there, and be able to just use them and have them appear in the admin center list as just another connection. So both my Azure Stack HCI, my Azure Data Box Edge, as well as my Azure Compute all appear in admin center. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to head on over here to the connections list. And we've always had the ability, for example, to show Windows servers and server clusters. So I'm going to head on over here. I'm going to click on Add. And you can see we have this beautiful new layout here for adding resources. I can add a Windows server. I can add a Windows server cluster. By the way, I can now add an Azure VM. We've made that really easy. But check this out. You can now create a brand new Azure VM right here from Admin Center. So I never, again, need to leave the console. So let me show you this. So I'm loading my Azure subscription information and my resource group and subscription. I'm going to set that resource group. And this is me, so the VM name is obviously going to be something like Windows Server 2019, because that's just what I do. I'm going to go to the region. I'm going to choose Western United States. You don't need to see me type in credentials, so I'm going to use some cache credentials. And now I get to the point where, guess what, I'm going to go ahead and choose the size. Now what's really cool here is since we are actually talking to Azure ARM, the Azure Resource Manager, I'm getting these sizes directly from Azure. And in fact, you can see in this region I have VMs with up to 72 processors and up to 448 gigabytes of RAM. So yeah, you know, I would love one of these for Christmas, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to be out of budget. So that's really cool. But if I wanted, I could absolutely create this right here. I'm going to go with a more standard size, so I'm going to head on over here to something more normal. Here's an A4 VM. This has 8 virtual processors, up to 14 gigs of RAM, and up to 16 data disks. So this is something a little bit more real world. And next, I go and choose my storage. So by default, the OS is put on a standard SSD, and I'm going to go in here and add some LUNs. Again, I can add up to 16 of these. That's data 1. And then the size is going to be up to 200 gigabytes. The disk type is going to be an SSD, and I'm going to use read-only caching. And if I wanted, again, because it supports up to 16 SSDs, I could keep adding more. I'm fine with what I have here, so I'm just going to continue right along. So my next option, of course, is if I want, because I'm using ExpressRoute or I'm using our new extended security network capabilities, is I could actually join my domain. So right here, I have a VM that I'm creating in Azure I could domain join, but I'm going to keep it real simple today. So I'm not going to domain join it. And now I choose my networking. Now because I chose a subscription that only had a very simple networking, it actually chose it all by default, so there's nothing I need to do here. And lastly, I come in here, I'm going to review everything I just set. So here's my VM size, it's an A4, it's using a standard SSD, it's got 1 data disk, and here's the network attached. So now I click on Create, and folks, not a single time did I leave Admin Center. Haley, did you see me leave Admin Center once?
No.
No. So right here, you can see I'm creating the disks and I'm creating the network. And if you want to see what this looks like in Azure, we click on the Azure link, and of course, we take you to the exact right location in Azure. And so here you can see, here's the VM, the disks are created, the networking is created, the VM is still being created, and I don't have a lot of time to sit around. Oh, I apparently have some credits on my account, that's nice to know. I'm going to head back on over here to Admin Center, and it's going to keep creating. When it's done, I can come right here and click on the Add button and add that Azure VM, and will just appear as another one in my list. So now I have all my Azure Stack HCI, all my VMs, all my physical that I'm running on-prem, as well as my Azure VM just appears there, and I just manage them all in the same interface. And not a single time that I leave Admin Center except to show you what it looked like in Azure. So that's a bunch of the work that we've been doing to create new Azure IaaS there. Now, one of the other cool things I mentioned, in this case, I was using ExpressRoute. I can actually, join the domain. Well, what if I'm not using ExpressRoute? So one of the things we introduced last year was Azure Network Adapter, which was point-to-site VPN. It's if you have a single OS and you want to VPN into Azure where you don't need ExpressRoute, and everyone looked at that and said, oh my gosh, that's so cool. But Jeff, I need that for more than one server. I need like site-to-site VPN. Guess what we've been working on? Site-to-site VPN. It's called extended networking. So you can make your Azure network seamless between your on-prem and the cloud. And this is always a huge challenge. Why? Well, let me actually explain and show you why this is such a challenge. So you've got your application that's running. So this is what we showed last year. This is what we released last year. This is the point-to-site VPN. Again, this is for a single OS. And you basically click on Add Network Adapter, set up your point-to-site VPN, all in Admin Center, and in a few clicks, you're done. But when folks say, I need more than one OS, I don't want to set up multiple point-to-site, you want to set up site-to-site. So here's the challenge. People tell me, Jeff, I've got this application. It's running on premises. And it has a specific dependency on IP address. Its VM16 here is running 10.10.6.16. And I need to move that into Azure, but I need to take the IP address with me. Because we wrote this 10 years ago, and we know that there are apps that are actually looking for this app on the network by the IP address, and we don't even know where all the dependencies are. And we know that if we move it without change this, we're going to break stuff, and we probably won't find out. Some things we may find out immediately. Some things we may not find out till end of quarter. We don't want that. So what we have now is with Azure Extended Network, you can maintain your local IP address. So what we do here is you're essentially taking your VM, you're moving it into the cloud, and it becomes an Azure VM. But again, it's on a different network. We don't want you to break this. We don't want to have an app compat problem. So we create this Azure Extended Network. And what this does is it allows me to take that IP address into the cloud, because this is a site-to-site VPN. And all of a sudden now, that VM running in Azure has the same 10.10.6.16 address. It's almost magical the way this works, because now I don't have to worry about app compat. Because guess what? I took that vestige of IP address with me. And this is literally a session in and of itself. So if you want to know more about this cool new Azure Extended Network, please head on over to Greg Kusanza's session. It's seamlessly connecting on-premises to Azure with Windows Server and hybrid networking. That was actually earlier this morning. So you guys can stream it. You can stream it and watch it later. It's BRK3192. But again, it's a full session on its own. It's really, really awesome.
Great. So you saw Jeff create an Azure VM from Windows Admin Center, and then we talked about the networking that you can use to actually connect up to that VM from your on-premise environment. So how do I actually go manage it from Windows Admin Center? And Jeff kind of alluded to this. Next to that create button was an add button in the Azure VM. So let's check it out in Windows Admin Center. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and go to the Add button, and now I'll click on Add Azure VM. And now Windows Admin Center is going to ask me to sign in, give my Azure credentials, and then I'll go ahead and give the subscription that I want it to use. I'll look for the resource group that I have my VM in, and then I'll select the virtual machine that I want to add to manage with Windows Admin Center. And you'll see Windows Admin Center automatically populates the IP addresses here. And here I'm only looking at a private IP. There's actually no public IP on this Azure virtual machine. So I'm connecting to it in a totally secure way because I've set up that networking. So I'll go ahead and click Add. And now I can connect to it like it were any other on-premise machine. But before I do that, because it's an Azure VM, I'm going to make sure that I change my credentials and make sure that I'm going to be able to connect to it as an admin on that machine. But now I can go ahead and connect to it. And you'll see that Windows Admin Center actually automatically detects that this is an Azure virtual machine, and it actually gives me a link into the Azure portal so I can see that Azure virtual machine in the Azure portal if I want to do things like restart the VM, stop or start the VM, look at other configuration services attached to that virtual machine. So that's being able to add an Azure virtual machine in Windows Admin Center.
That's very cool. Now, one of the things, so we've been talking about so far extending on-premises to Azure. That's one way to think about hybrid. We've been doing a ton of work there, as you can see. Now I want to talk about the other way, which is using Azure to actually, from a hybrid standpoint, help you centrally manage from Azure. And let's take a moment. How many of you are using, have traditional enterprise tools? System Center, OpenView, Tivoli, all of the, yes, okay. Yeah, all of the, I see all of the above happen. Totally, understand, I'm right there with you. So as someone who's used to using these products and used to using these for management, they're great because they allow you to do this management, but there's also kind of a tax that you have to pay, which means you have to manage the management system. If you're using System Center, we release a new version, well, you got to patch it, you got to update, you got to do all that stuff. One of the nice things about having management up in Azure is we handle all that for you. All you do is focus on the actual management experience and what are the things you need to accomplish, not the I have to keep the management system kind of thing happening. And so there's a lot of things that we can do now in Azure to help you out and help you be more effective in managing your resources wherever they reside. So when it comes to centrally managing from Azure, there's a lot of different ways we think about this. So there's security, there's monitoring, there's updating, there's governance, and so much more. And so with that in mind, we want to take a view and actually look at some of these very specific things that we can do from the cloud on down. One of these is actually cloud intelligence to your secure environments. So one of the things we introduced in Windows Server 2019 was Defender with advanced threat protection. We actually introduced 2016, we introduced Defender, and a lot of people came to us and they said, no, 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 we want the full ATP in there as well because we want to use the cloud to manage our clients and servers all from the same console up in the cloud. We said, that makes a ton of sense. Well, we've also been doing a ton of work to figure out, okay, how can we deliver Azure Security Center, which monitors your servers, looks for suspicious activity, and alerts you when something's wrong? And using the power and the global scale of Azure to actually protect your on-premises resources, not just your Azure resources. And so with that, let me pass it on over to Hayley to show you Azure Security Center.
All right, and we'll see how easy it is to set up within Windows Admin Center. So here I'm in the Azure Security Center tool within Admin Center, and I'll go ahead and set this all up. And you'll see it's going to pull up my subscription, and all I need to choose is the workspace that I want to connect to. So I can either use an existing one like I'll do here, or I could create a new one if I wanted to. So it's just going to retrieve that. I'll go ahead and click Setup. And then Windows Admin Center is connecting me automatically into Azure Security Center. And I'll see here a server-specific view of Azure Security Center on this server. So I can see if I have any recommendations or any alerts. And now since I just set this up, I don't have any recommendations or alerts yet. But now I can actually go into Azure Security Center in the Azure portal to get that more centralized view. So from here, I can see all of the, well, I'll quickly sign in. But from here, I can see all of the security policy and compliance, my security hygiene, as well as my threat protection across all of my resources in my Azure subscription. So that's not just my on-premise machines, that's my Azure virtual machines, my applications, what have you. So let's go ahead and drill into the compute and applications. And then from here, I can go ahead and look at the VM and computers and see that I'm managing both Azure VMs as well as my Azure connected machines that are on premises. But let's head back over to Windows Admin Center, where I can actually see more specific alerts as they appear on my server. So here I see an alert has come up. And it tells me a little bit about this alert, but it's actually a hyperlink that I can take into the Azure portal to get even more detail about this alert. And Azure Security Center provides me a whole bunch of information, such as the severity of it, the user that ran the malicious command, even what the command line was, and so that I can go now take proactive remediation action to make sure that this doesn't become a larger issue. Of course, this was just a test threat because I don't want to make my servers insecure. All right, let's next talk about Azure Monitor. So monitoring is super important because it allows you to visualize your metrics across your resources. It also allows you to query and analyze logs. So you're sending up performance counters and event logs that you can then look centrally in the Azure portal and query on those across multiple resources. And finally, you can set up alerts and actions to take proactive behavior or to notify you of critical conditions should they come up.
And Hayley, we know this is like one of the top requests in Admin Center. Jeff, we want to get an email alert when something happens. Top request.
Yep. And so Azure Monitor actually lets us do that in Windows Admin Center. So let's take a look at the components that actually create this solution. So for my on-premise servers, they'll be sending up data, the performance counters and event logs, into Log Analytics Workspace, which then Azure Monitor will run queries and analyze that data. And then Azure Monitor will trigger any alerts should they be triggered, and then that will be sent to me as an email, a text, or even a voice call. So let's look at what we can do with Azure Monitor in Windows Admin Center. So here I'm in the Azure Monitor tool. I'll go ahead and click Setup. And by now, you'll realize that this is a quite familiar flow, right? I'm going to set up my subscription that I want to use and decide if I want to create a new resource, which I will in this case, as well as a workspace. And then Admin Center is automatically going to install any agents I need and establish that trust relationship. So I'll go ahead and click Setup. And you'll see it takes a moment, so let's come back and see how it looks once it's already set up. So you'll see Windows Admin Center is going to provide me a lot of details about this connection to Azure Monitor. So I can see the workspace that it's in, as well as get some easy hyperlinks into valuable pieces like monitoring my Azure VM, querying those logs, and setting up alerts and actions. But Windows Admin Center actually goes a step further and helps you set up some of those alerts that we know you want to get on your servers. So let's take a look at how Windows Admin Center does that. So I'll go click Edit Alert Rules. And from here, Windows Admin Center provides a set of default alerts. So I'm going to select the CPU utilization, disk capacity utilization, memory utilization, and of course, heartbeat, just to know that my server is up and running. And of course, Windows Admin Center provides these default conditions that will trigger those alerts. But if I want to go and fine-tune those, I can do so in the Azure portal after you've created them here in Windows Admin Center. So the next step, because I want to get an email, is to actually create what's called an action group. And so I just have to give it a name. So for here, I want to email myself, and I'll put in my email address. And it's that simple. Windows Admin Center will go and create that action group to take effect when any of these alerts are triggered. So I'll go ahead and click Save. That'll take just a moment to update. And then I'll see them show up within Windows Admin Center. So I can see which alerts I've actually set up from Windows Admin Center. Now let's take a look at what happens when that alert actually gets triggered. What is the email that I get? So that looks just like this. I see that my alert is
so
triggered.
Awesome.
I see that my alert is triggered. I see this subject line that it's high CPU utilization. And then I can also see the insights, the offending server here. And so I can actually click in with this View Results button to see the query that was triggered on this alert. And since Windows Admin Center is a great troubleshooting tool, I'm just going to open a new tab, open Windows Admin Center, and go troubleshoot the problem that's causing my high CPU utilization. So this was the server that was offending, application server 1. So I'll connect into that, and right from the overview page, I can see what's going on. And it looks like, yes, my CPU is running quite high. So I want to definitely take care of that. So within Windows Admin Center, I can actually go to the Processes tool and see what's causing my CPU to run so high. And I'll sort by CPU to quickly get to the root of the problem. And here it looks like there's a stress tool running. So that seems like something that was kind of left over from a dev machine. So let's go ahead and end that. I'll say yes. And Windows Admin Center will take care of that for me. And let's head back to the overview page to make sure that my CPU is running normally as expected. Yep, I can see that drop off, and everything looks good. So you can see the value here with Azure Monitor and Windows Admin Center side by side, giving me that ability to go troubleshoot, first find out if there's an issue, and then go troubleshoot it using Windows Admin Center. All right, so that's monitoring. What about updating? Well, Azure Update Management is a great way to centrally deploy updates across both your Windows and Linux OSs, running wherever they may be, whether that's on-prem or in Azure. And so with Azure Update Management, it's really easy to just centrally deploy that update across all of your servers. And Windows Admin Center lets you both set that up and then also reflects to you, if you're in the Updates tool within Admin Center, that it's actually being managed by Azure. And I could click on that hyperlink there to take me into the Azure portal and schedule those centralized updates. All right, now let's talk about governance.
Ooh, let's talk about governance. Before we do, I just have to point out that what Hayley just showed. First of all, the Azure Security Center tool, brand new. We've never had that before. It's a brand new hybrid tool, first time in there. Azure Monitor, same one, brand new tool. Think about it. In your data center, where you guys are running traditional tools, maybe you're using System Center, you're comfortable with it. But what about your branch office environments? What happens when you're a large insurance company and you've got 500 branch offices? Do you put System Center in every branch office? Of course you don't. Well, wouldn't it be great if you could actually go to every one of those branch offices and say, hey, you know what, we're just going to use Azure Monitor, and by the way, when there's an issue, it'll email me. Because the fact that it's running up in the cloud, the fact that we have global scale, the fact that you can easily set these up, you can easily tweet those monitors, and guess what? We're going to be adding all sorts of new monitoring actions in there, and you can create your own, of course, because you have your own custom applications. Got it. So this is kind of a no-brainer. So I'm really excited about the introduction of Security Center Monitor. Thank you for showing those, Hayley. And of course, update management continues to rock. We've been seeing a lot of people adopting that. So we got to get to one of the other big announcements of this week, and that's been Azure Arc. Azure Arc really comprises three technologies we're talking about right today, which is running data services anywhere, at-scale Kubernetes management, but also the ability to organize and govern across environments. So quick question for people in the room. How many of you use group policy? Anybody? Yeah, and all the hands go up, of course. Everybody uses group policy. Now, GP is great if you're in a domain and you're using Windows, but what happens if you're in the cloud, or you're in multi-cloud, or you're using Linux, or you're not domain joined? Then what do you do? Then it gets really difficult, Jeff. Yeah, it does. And Azure Arc is all about that. Azure Arc is about extending governance and control to any infrastructure. So even if you're running in Azure, if you're running on-premises in your own private cloud, you've got multiple private clouds, or you've got stuff even in AWS and Google, you can apply governance and policy to all of these things. And so that's the one I want to focus on really quickly. It's this centralized governance, because Azure Policy gives me that ability to actually, with Azure Arc-enabled servers, to apply policy anywhere. And so essentially what you do is you need to enable Azure Arc, and you can do it from the Azure portal. That's one way to do it. But of course, because we're here talking about hybrid capabilities in Admin Center, you better believe we can do this in Admin Center as well. So let me show you how you do this in Admin Center. So here I've got a server. This is Silvernode 1. And in fact, you can see right over here, I'm going to select the settings. And I'm going to enable, click on Azure Arc for servers. It's just a new option here in Admin Center, brand new this week. So I can choose the subscription. Give me 1 minute. And I can create an existing resource group, or create a new one, or use an existing one. If I want to use a proxy server, I can configure that. But I'm just going to click on Create. That's all I had to do. And what's happening right now is we're deploying the agent. The agent does not require a reboot. And it's registering this resource with Azure. So now I have set up this Azure. It's installed the agent. It's registered with Azure. And now it says set up Azure Arc for servers, all taken care of. And of course, now if I want to head on over here and actually see what this looks like in Azure, I can click on it, which of course takes me to the exact right location in Azure, where I can see a whole bunch of Azure resources, all readily available right here. And again, they all appear in the single, even though I'm running in Azure, this resource that's on premises, currently running on Azure Stack HCI, appears right here. And so now that it's doing this, I can do things like apply policy. So for example, I can head on over and configure guest configuration policy. And in fact, I'm switching on over to Admin Center doing that. And here you can see I'm at Azure Policy, and here I am for this node, Silvernode 1. You can see how I am doing from a compliance standpoint. If I actually want to drill into a specific policy, I can do that and see what those look like. And again, I'm applying these policies to physical servers, virtual machines, running anywhere. This is actually running on premises on Azure Stack HCI. It's not running in Azure, but it's now a manageable resource. So think about things you could apply policy for. Certificates that are expiring, security baselines, making sure that Defender ATP is enabled on every one of your resources, and so many more. We've actually included a whole bunch of these already built right into Azure Policy, and if you want to create those, you can actually create your own as well. So for all those folks that raised their hand that talked about GP, a little bit of career advice. I know you've probably spent the last 10, 20 years working on GP, and it's an awesome thing because it's a critical tool in your arsenal. This is going to be the next one. You need to make sure you're adding this to your tool belt. This is going to be critical to your resume, it's going to be critical to your business card, and it's going to make you highly marketable because you are that person that can apply policy and governance to any VM running anywhere. Windows, Linux, AWS, Google, Azure, on-prem, all done here through Azure Policy. And if you want to know more about this, we have a whole hybrid governance session on this with Jane and Chris today at 1 and 1:45. And in fact, it's the one happening
right here,
right after this session. So if you want to know more about Azure Arc, you can do that. And if you want to know about automatically monitoring, securing, and updating your on-premises server, Hayley gave this session already. It's really awesome. And you can actually, you should be able to see this recorded as well.
That's true.
So finally, let's wrap on up here because I know we're about to run out of time. We've shown a lot of things here today, a whole bunch of new content, Security Center, Azure Monitoring, Extended Network, and so much more. And our commitment to you is that we continue to focus on both of these. It's not just one that makes up hybrid. It's not just extending into Azure, and it's not just cloud extending on down. That's one of the core differences between us and everybody else. The guys, a lot of folks, if you're AWS or Google, they can do the right kind of, sort of, but not really. They kind of talk about it like they do, but not really. On the left, That's our breadbasket. But we put all these together, this is totally our wheelhouse. We do all of these end to end. So centrally managing and extending on-premises into Azure and centrally managing from Azure, we're doing all of this together. And we're going to continue to do this in Windows Admin Center. And as a reminder to everyone, everything we've just shown you today, every single demo, everything we showed you, by the way, you already own this. It's already included. Admin Center is part of the cost of Windows. There is no additional license. There's nothing I need. Everything you showed in Windows Admin Center is built right in, and you can download it today. So if you haven't downloaded Admin Center, Windows Admin Center 1910, released this week, I urge you to do that and make it a key part of your arsenal as well.
That's right. So it's really easy to go download, just at aka.ms/Windows Admin Center. And if you actually want to go a step further and try out the preview features before they're available more publicly, you can join Windows Insiders and get access to those early previews before they go public. And of course, Windows Admin Center continues to be driven by our customer feedback. So we really want to hear from you at our user voice page at aka.ms/WAC feedback. And if you also want to take feedback a step further, you can join the Cloud Insiders. And so this will require a little bit more engagement from you, but we'll do things like usability studies and get your input on the designs that we're building so that you can actually have a say in the design of Windows Admin Center moving forward.
And this is a really important fact, because quite honestly, Admin Center has been driven by you. Okay, we go to user voice where you guys are posting feature requests. We have these usability studies with you. And you tell us what are the features that you need most. And literally, if you look at Admin Center, what we launched a year ago, even before that, it was a small set of tools. Then it was a larger set and a larger set. And there's so many now that we have a scroll bar, and we've continued to add more. And that's being driven by you. So a huge thank you to all of you for your continued input and feedback in Admin Center, and we want to keep that going.
That's right. And if you have any questions, we're actually going to be doing a live Q&A at the Microsoft Ignite live stage tomorrow morning at 10:10 to 10:25. So we want to actually have you tweet us your questions at #WACLive, and then we can answer those on the Ignite live stage.
Awesome. So with that, we also want to remind everyone, as always, to please evaluate this session. Thank you very much. We hope you enjoy the rest of the time here at Ignite. If you have any questions, we want to make sure we actually clear the stage for the next folks. We'll be right outside there answering any questions. With that, thank you guys very much, and enjoy the rest of Microsoft Ignite.